The fluorescent light above my hospital bed buzzed like a trapped insect, steady and mean. On my wrist, a white plastic band pinched my skin. Monique Harris, Diob. Allergies? None. A hospital bracelet, ordinary to everyone else. To me, it was the first thing in years that said I mattered. I stared at it while the night nurse adjusted my IV and asked softly, "Sweetheart, do you feel safe at home?" For a second, I couldn't answer because I wasn't sure what safe was supposed to feel like anymore. I'm 45. I build spreadsheets the way other people build walls. I audit budgets, trace numbers, follow paper trails until they confess. At work, I'm the woman people call when they need the truth. In my marriage, I'd been swallowing lies until they tasted like routine. That's the trick of financial abuse in marriage. It doesn't start with bruises. It starts with, "Let me handle the bills, baby," and "We're a team," and "It's simpler if everything goes into one account." It starts with your paycheck landing in a joint account you can't touch without asking. It starts with your card declining at the grocery store while your husband's mother sighs, loud and holy, like you've sinned by buying grapes. And then one night, it becomes a shove. Not a movie punch, not a dramatic scream, just a shove, quick, casual, familiar. After a long day of him snapping, after his sister laughing at my old lady shoes, after his mama announcing she was moving in for a few weeks and never leaving. A shove with a low growl. "You think you're better than me because you wear a suit?" I hit the kitchen counter. My hip caught the corner. The room flashed white. Then the floor rushed up and swallowed me. They told the paramedics I collapsed from stress. Darius Cole stood in the doorway, arms folded, playing the worried husband, his face arranged into concern, like it was a tie he could knot on command. "Monique works too hard," he said, loud enough for the neighbors to hear. "I keep telling her to rest." Gloria Cole clutched her pearls, literal pearls, and sighed, "This is what happens when a woman tries to do a man's job." Brielle, his little sister, hovered behind them, filming her own reflection, already planning a post about family emergencies. I lay there on my own kitchen floor and realized something ugly. They were going to narrate my life for me until I died. In the hospital, the air smelled like bleach and plastic and old coffee. My ribs ached when I breathed. My hip pulsed. But the worst pain wasn't physical. It was the quiet certainty that I would go home and nothing would change. Unless I changed it. The door to my room opened without a knock. Darius walked in like he owned the place. More manager than husband. Black hoodie, trimmed beard, expensive cologne meant to convince the world he was winning. Gloria followed, lipstick perfect, scarf wrapped like she was attending a funeral. Brielle trailed last, phone in hand, eyes bright with curiosity and cruelty. They took up space around my bed like they were surrounding a prize. Darius's gaze flicked to my wristband, then the IV, then the monitor, like he was checking the cost of my episode. "You scared everybody," he said. I blinked. You always do the most," Gloria cut in. "Stress is a choice, Monique. You could have cooked earlier instead of acting single." Brielle didn't look up from her screen. "At least the hospital fed you. Maybe the house won't be empty tonight." I tasted blood from biting down on every word I wanted to throw back. Darius leaned closer, voice low, the way men sound reasonable while they threaten you. "Don't say anything weird to these people," he murmured. "Keep it simple. You fainted. You were tired. That's it." It hit me then. A domestic violence survivor story doesn't start with rescue. It starts with control. Control of the harm and control of the story. Nurse Tanya came in to check my vitals, and Darius transformed. Shoulders soft, eyebrows lifted. He reached for my hand, the one without the bracelet, and squeezed like we were a love story. "Hey, baby," he said louder. "How you feeling? You need anything?" "I'm here." Tanya's eyes moved from his hand to my face. She didn't look fooled. She looked like a woman who'd seen this scene 1,000 times. When she turned to adjust my IV, she leaned in close enough that her words brushed my ear. "Ma'am," she whispered, Do you feel safe at home? My heart hammered. Darius was right there. Gloria was right there. Brielle was right there. I wanted to say no. I wanted to say, he shoved me. He controls my money. His mother lives in my house like it's hers. His sister uses my card like a toy. I'm tired. I'm disappearing. Instead, I heard myself say, I'm just stressed. Tanya nodded like she accepted it, but her eyes said she didn't. As she checked my pulse, she slipped a small card into my palm. Her fingers were warm. If you ever need resources, she murmured, call that number, day or night. I closed my hand around it like it was a key. Darius waited until she left. Then his face snapped back into place, hard, impatient. What did she ask you? He said. Nothing. Don't lie to me, Monique. Gloria stepped closer, peering at me like I was a problem to fix. You better not embarrass my son. People talk. A woman who can't keep her home together doesn't deserve one. Brielle finally looked up, smiling. She ain't going nowhere. Where would she go? She too old to start over. Starting over at 45. The words landed like a dare. Because I was tired, my knees ached some mornings. I liked my tea hot and my house quiet. I wasn't 25 dreaming about reinvention. I was 45 surviving. But there's a moment when surviving starts to feel like dying slow. Darius crossed his arms. When you get out, you're cooking, he said. Mom shouldn't have to fend for herself. I'm in the hospital, I said, and my voice surprised me. It wasn't loud, it was flat. And you're still talking back, he snapped. That's the problem. My hospital bracelet scratched my skin. The plastic felt like a reminder. You are here. You are alive. You have a name. I looked at them, Darius, Gloria, Brielle, and something in me went quiet. Not fear, calculation, like my mind was lining up columns. Mortgage, utilities, HOA, insurance, mine. Gloria's monthly help, mine. Brielle's card, mine. Darius's business expenses, mine. And the largest number of all, the cost of my silence. Darius stepped closer again, voice dropping. Don't get slick, he warned. You don't want to make this hard. Gloria smiled, sweet as poison. We're family. Family takes care of each other. That means you. They left a few minutes later, taking the warmth out of the room with them. The door clicked shut, and the quiet that followed felt thick and real. I'd spent years telling myself it wasn't that bad, because he didn't leave me black and blue every day. He saved the worst for when no one could hear. A pinch in the hallway, a hissed insult in the car, a hand on the back of my neck steering me like luggage. And always the money, my money, locked behind passwords I didn't choose. When I tried to open a savings account last winter, he laughed. What, you planning to run? Gloria chimed in. A good wife doesn't keep secrets. I kept quiet, because quiet was cheaper than conflict. I told myself it was temporary, that he'd change soon. But lying there, I finally saw the bill coming due. This wasn't love. It was leverage. And leverage can be reversed. By sunrise, they'd be living a karma story. Husband loses everything. Without realizing, I'd already signed the ending. My hands shook. Not from weakness, from clarity. I pulled the card Nurse Tanya had given me from my clenched fist. A hotline. A doorway I'd refused to see. Women's empowerment after abuse isn't always a speech. Sometimes it's a woman alone in a hospital bed deciding she will stop cooperating with her own destruction. My phone buzzed. A text from Darius. Don't talk. Don't be stupid. We'll pick you up tomorrow. Mom wants chicken soup. I stared at the screen until my eyes burned. Then I typed back the calmest lie I could offer. Okay, one word, obedient. The kind of answer that would make him relax. Then I turned off my phone and pressed the call button. When Tanya returned, I didn't circle the truth anymore. I need to talk to somebody, I said. Somebody? Legal. Her face softened. I can connect you with an advocate, she said. And I can document what you tell me. Document. That word loosened something in my chest, because I knew documentation. I trusted it. Feelings can be twisted. Memories can be questioned. Paper doesn't blink. I told her enough to open a file, not everything yet, just enough. She asked me to lift my gown slightly so she could see the bruising on my hip. Her mouth tightened when she saw the shape of it. "That's not from a simple fall," she said quietly. "No," I whispered. "It's not." She handed me another card, local legal aid, plus a name I could ask for. "You don't have to decide everything tonight," she said, "but you can start protecting yourself tonight." Protecting myself. I looked down at my hospital bracelet again, at my name printed like it mattered. And that's when the plan began. Not with screaming, not with broken plates, with receipts, with signatures. With a bank account freeze revenge so clean it would feel like a door clicking shut. With hidden security camera evidence. With divorce papers and restraining order paperwork ready like a blade in a drawer. I lay back and listened to the monitor beep, steady as a metronome. Outside my room, life kept moving. A cart rolled by. Someone laughed in the hallway. Inside my chest, something finally settled. Because I understood the real punishment. It wasn't making them hurt. It was making them irrelevant. So if you think this is just another story about a narcissistic husband and toxic mother-in-law who pushed a good woman too far, stay with me. In 20 minutes, when I walked into my own kitchen with a covered silver tray, they expected chicken and rice. What they got was a one-way ticket to their own personal hell on earth. Don't go anywhere. Hit like if you're still here, and tell me in the comments what city you're listening from tonight, because I want to know how far this truth can travel. I didn't leave the hospital that night with a dramatic vow or a suitcase in my hand. I left with something quieter, dangerous even, certainty. But to understand why a plastic bracelet on my wrist felt like a lifeline, you have to know what my life looked like before those fluorescent lights, before the nurse's question, before I started building a file on my own marriage, like it was a case. I met Darius Cole when I was 39 and tired in a way sleep couldn't fix. I just made senior at my firm. Long hours, tight deadlines, the kind of work where your brain keeps adding columns even when you're brushing your teeth. I wasn't looking for romance. I was looking for peace. Then Darius walked into a friend's backyard cookout wearing a clean white tee, a bright smile, and the kind of confidence that makes people lean in. He laughed easily. He listened like my words were worth collecting. He made me feel seen without making me feel studied. "You're a numbers woman," he said, impressed. "That's sexy. That's power." No man had ever called my discipline attractive. Most men acted like my ambition was a warning label. Darius acted like it was a crown. He told me he worked in marketing, that he was on the verge of something big. He drove a black SUV with tinted windows. He carried himself like a provider. When he reached for my hand, it felt warm, protective, safe. The first year was good enough that I still feel embarrassed admitting how hard I fell for it. He brought flowers to my office. He cooked spaghetti with too much garlic and watched me eat like feeding me fed his ego. He told me he loved that I didn't need him, but he wanted to be the man I could lean on anyway. And I wanted to believe him. We got married fast. Not reckless fast, I told myself. Purposeful fast. Two grown adults who knew what they wanted. At 40, I wasn't interested in wasting time. Darius proposed with a ring that sparkled under restaurant lights, and his voice shook when he asked. I remember thinking, finally, someone who sees me. The shift didn't come all at once. It never does. That's how control slips in. Soft shoes, no sound. It started with money, because money is the easiest leash to hide. After we got married, Darius suggested we combine finances. It's what married people do, he said. One team, one account. He talked about building wealth, buying a nicer place, investing. He said he'd handle the bills because he was better at negotiating, and my time was too valuable to spend on utilities. I hesitated. I've audited enough companies to know you never put blind trust in a system you can't access. But he kissed my forehead and said, "Baby, don't treat me like a client. I'm your husband." So I agreed. My paycheck went into a joint account. His checks went in too, at first. Then slowly things got blurry. I'd ask about a charge and he'd laugh. You worry too much. I'd mention setting up my own savings and he'd smirk. What you hiding? If I wanted to buy something beyond groceries, I'd hear, let me see if we can swing it. Swing it. As if I wasn't the one holding the entire weight. When the first decline happened at the grocery store, I blamed myself. I thought I'd mistyped the PIN. I felt the cashier's eyes on me as I tried again. Darius wasn't there. Gloria was. I hadn't met his mother until after we married. Another red flag I painted over with optimism. He said she was private, that she'd warm up once she knew I was serious. When she finally came to dinner, she wore pearls and perfume strong enough to announce her before she entered the room. She looked at our home like she was inspecting a hotel lobby. She ate my food without thanking me. She asked how old I was, like it was a diagnosis. When my card declined, she sighed, long, theatrical. Maybe you should learn to budget, she said, loud enough for the people in line to hear. A woman can make any money disappear if she's careless. I felt my face burn. I paid with another card and told myself it was a glitch. It wasn't a glitch. It was a pattern. A month later, Gloria called Darius crying about unsafe neighbors and loneliness. She needed to stay with us for a little while, just until she found a new place. Darius didn't ask me. He informed me. It's my mother, he said, like that ended the conversation. You wouldn't make me choose. I didn't. I rearranged my guest room. I bought new towels. I smiled until my cheeks hurt. Gloria moved in like she'd been waiting her whole life to reclaim a throne. She criticized my cooking, my cleaning, my work hours. She treated my home like a stage where she could perform being mistreated by a daughter-in-law who never did enough. Darius ate it up. He liked seeing someone else correct me. It made him feel taller. Then Brielle showed up. Brielle was 29, pretty in a sharp-edged way, with acrylic nails that clicked like impatience. She called herself an influencer, but what she influenced most was my blood pressure. She'd breeze through my house wearing my robe, drinking my coffee, taking selfies in my mirror. She'd ask Darius for a little help, and he'd tell me to add her as an authorized user on my credit card until she gets on her feet. She never got on her feet. She got on my card, designer bags, hair appointments, shoes that cost more than my first car payment. And when I confronted her, she'd smile and say, "Relax, Auntie. It's not like you can't afford it." That's how a toxic family drains you, by treating your strength like a resource they're entitled to. I wish I could say the abuse began with a bruise, because then I'd have a clear date to circle in red. But my domestic violence survivor story began with small humiliations stacked like receipts. The silent treatment when I asked for respect, the jokes about me being too uptight, the way Darius would hold my chin between his fingers and force my face toward him when he wanted my attention. "Don't get smart," he'd whisper. "You're not the boss in here." And then there was the isolation. He didn't tell me I couldn't see my friends. He just made it exhausting. A fight before every dinner invitation. A pout if I took a phone call. A comment like, "Your people don't really love you like we do." Soon, it felt easier to stay home and keep the peace. The day I collapsed, I had been running on fumes for months. End-of-quarter audits, travel, late nights. I kept telling myself, once this project is done, I'll rest. Once Darius gets back on his feet, things will calm down. Once Gloria finds her own place, my house will be mine again. Once is a trap word. It keeps you obedient. That morning, I had a splitting headache and a tightness in my chest I tried to ignore. Darius had spent the night gambling online. He called it sports picks, like that made it respectable. At 6 a.m., he shook me awake to ask if I'd transferred money to cover a little mistake. Gloria banged on my bedroom door, demanding breakfast. Brielle needed a ride to the mall because her car was acting weird. I left the house with my jaw clenched so hard my teeth hurt. At the office, I stared at a spreadsheet and watched the numbers blur. I remember thinking, if I close my eyes for 1 minute, maybe my body will reset. Instead, my knees folded. The room tilted. Then nothing. When I woke up on the floor, my coworkers' faces hovered above me like worried moons. Someone had called an ambulance. Someone had put a jacket under my head. Someone, bless them, had already called my emergency contact, Darius. He arrived an hour later, calm, not panicked. He didn't rush to my side. He asked the doctor, "When can she go home?" That was the moment I knew the truth. I wasn't a wife to him. I was a bank, a maid, and a reputation shield. In the hospital bed later, with my name printed on my wrist, I finally heard the question I'd avoided for years. Do you feel truly safe at home? And for the first time, I didn't answer with once. When they discharged me the next afternoon, the nurse didn't hand me freedom. She handed me paperwork, a clipboard full of instructions, a packet of prescriptions, a list of symptoms to watch for. And right on top, my signature on a line that said I understood what I was walking back into. Darius stood at the foot of the bed, tapping his phone like the hospital was a slow drive-through. Gloria sat in the corner chair, purse on her lap, eyes narrowed like she'd been forced to babysit a child who refused to behave. Brielle leaned against the wall, taking selfies with the get-well-soon balloons she'd brought for the photo opportunity. I kept my face neutral. I kept my voice soft. I played the part they expected. The grateful wife, the embarrassed patient, the woman who would apologize for making a scene. Because the most dangerous moment in a domestic violence survivor story is the moment the abuser thinks he still has you. In the wheelchair, rolling through the hallway, I watched families pass, real concern on their faces, hands squeezed, shoulders supporting shoulders. I felt like I was watching a different species. At the exit, cold air hit my bruised hip and made me suck in a breath. Darius didn't notice. He opened the passenger door of the SUV like he was doing me a favor. "Don't do that fainting thing again," he said as he buckled his seatbelt. "You know people talk." I stared out the window at the parking garage. "Mm-hmm." Gloria clicked her tongue from the back seat. "A woman's body follows her mind. Stop being dramatic, and you'll stop falling apart." Brielle laughed. "She's 45, y'all. That's what happens." Starting over at 45, I thought, doesn't happen because you feel young. It happens because you refuse to die old. The ride home was quiet except for the GPS voice and Darius's occasional sighs of irritation when traffic slowed. I listened to them the way I listened to office gossip. Information without emotion. Every word was a clue. When we pulled into the gated community, the guard lifted the barrier and waved us through. Mr. Calvin Brooks was on duty, broad shoulders under his security jacket, face steady as stone. He recognized me and nodded once. His gaze flicked to my wrist, where the hospital bracelet still hung loose. Then he looked at Darius. Not friendly, not hostile, just aware. Awareness mattered. At home, Gloria marched in first, as if she needed to reclaim territory before I remembered it was mine. She turned the thermostat down another notch. Brielle flopped onto my couch like she was paying rent. Darius tossed the car keys into the bowl by the door. The bowl I bought, the keys to the car I paid for, the entrance to the house I kept afloat. I moved slowly, wincing when my hip protested. The living room smelled like Gloria's perfume and fried food, grease trapped in upholstery. My house, my air, my lungs. "You're making chicken soup," Darius said, not a question. "Mom needs something warm." I looked at the clock. 4:12 p.m. My body still felt like it had been wrung out. My head still buzzed. "I'll make something," I said. Gloria's lips pressed into a satisfied line, like obedience was seasoning. I went to the kitchen and opened the refrigerator. Empty space where groceries should have been, except for a carton of eggs and a bottle of water. They'd eaten while I was in the hospital. Of course they had. They'd left me the shells. The old me would have rushed to the store, apologized to the refrigerator, blamed myself for not planning better. Instead, I closed the door gently and said nothing. I warmed water. I dropped bouillon in a pot. I made soup that tasted like compromise. I served it in a bowl Gloria reserved for company that never included me. While they ate, I sat at the edge of the armchair, my hands folded, my face calm. Darius glanced at me. "You quiet." "Still tired," I said. He smirked. "Good. Maybe you'll stop running your mouth. Gloria slurped loudly. A humble wife is a blessed wife. Brielle scrolled through her phone, chewing like she didn't know manners existed. Y'all see this? Some girl bought her mama a new Benz. Must be nice. My jaw tightened, but I kept the expression blank. I wasn't gathering courage. I was gathering evidence. That night, when they went to bed, I stayed up on the couch with a heating pad on my hip and my laptop on my knees. The house was quiet enough to hear the refrigerator hum, and the occasional creak of floorboards as the air settled. I opened my bank app. The joint account was there, but access was limited. Darius had set it up so I could view, but not manage, without his approval. My own paycheck sat behind glass like a museum exhibit. I opened my credit card accounts. Brielle's authorized user card was linked to mine. Her last purchase, $289 at a boutique I'd never step into. Timestamp, while I was in the ER. I stared at the line item until it stopped feeling personal and started feeling procedural. At work, I'd learned something early. If you want a system to change, you don't scream at it. You document how it's broken. I created a folder on my laptop and named it, simply, File. Inside, I made subfolders the way I would for an audit. House, bank, abuse, vehicle, communications. Then I started saving. Screenshots of transfers, PDFs of statements, photos of bruises. The discharge paperwork that recorded contusion left hip. The card Nurse Tanya had given me, now taped inside a notebook like a pressed flower. At midnight, my phone buzzed again. Darius, don't forget HOA due Friday, transfer it. It wasn't a request. It was an invoice. I typed back. Okay, one word. Calm. Compliant. The perfect disguise. Then I opened my calendar and circled Friday. Because something in me wanted the HOA paid on time for one last reason. I wanted the guard who protected this neighborhood to remember whose name was on those checks. The next day, I called in sick. Not because I was too weak to work, but because I needed time to move without being watched. Darius left the house around 10, claiming he had a meeting. He'd been unemployed for months, but he still used the language of employment like cologne. He wanted to smell like a provider, even when he wasn't. Gloria went to lunch with the ladies, which meant she would spend my money on salads she didn't need and gossip she couldn't afford. Brielle announced she was going shopping for content. When the front door finally shut behind them, I stood in the hallway and listened to the silence. No TV, no demands, no footsteps, just my own breathing. I moved fast but careful. I grabbed a small step stool and pulled a shoebox from the top shelf of my closet. Inside were documents I'd kept separate from the household mess. My passport, my social security card, my original car title, the deed documents from when we bought the house. I flipped through the house papers, heart steady. Both our names were on it. Darius had insisted. It's disrespectful, he'd said when I hesitated back then. A man needs to feel like a man. I'd signed because I wanted peace, because I'd mistaken ego management for love. Now I slid the papers back into the box and added a new note on top. Change title. I didn't know the full process yet, but I knew I had to stop sharing oxygen with people who treated me like furniture. Then I went into the living room and looked up at the corner near the bookshelf. That was where I'd installed the camera a week before I collapsed. I hadn't told anyone. I'd ordered it late at night after Darius grabbed my wrist hard enough to leave fingerprints when I tried to walk away from an argument. The camera was small, black, almost invisible against the shadow line where wall met ceiling. A tiny red dot blinked once every few seconds like a heartbeat. Hidden security camera evidence. A phrase that sounded dramatic until you needed it. I opened the camera app on my phone. The living room appeared on screen, quiet and empty. I tapped settings. I turned on cloud backup. I set an emergency share to one contact, Renee Whitfield. Renee wasn't just a lawyer. She was a friend from college who'd become the person you called when you were done being naive. We hadn't talked as much the past 2 years because Darius always had an opinion about single women with big mouths. But Renee had texted me when she heard I was in the hospital. If you need me, I'm here. I hadn't replied. Not yet. Replying felt like admitting something was wrong, but something was wrong. And admitting it was the first honest thing I'd done in a long time. I called her. She picked up on the second ring. Monique? My throat tightened. Hey! You okay? I could have said yes. I could have kept it light. I could have joked. Instead, I said, no. There was a pause, just enough to let the word land. Where are you? Renee asked, voice sharpening. At home. They're out. Good. Tell me what's happening. I sat on the edge of my bed, the hospital bracelet still on my wrist like a stubborn reminder, and I told her the clean version first. Control of money, constant insults, moving people into my house, the shove, the hospital. Renee exhaled slowly. Okay, she said. We're going to do this the right way. What's the right way? We don't argue with abusers, she said, and I heard the courtroom in her voice. We document them. We separate your finances. We protect your body. And we make sure you don't get trapped in the most dangerous part, when you try to leave. I swallowed. I don't want to end up on the news. Then you listen to me, she said. Can you meet me today? Yes. Don't text me. Don't call from your house phone. Turn off location sharing on your phone if you're on his plan. I am. Of course you are, she muttered. Okay, leave your phone at home. Take cash. Get an Uber on the street if you have to. And Monique, take photos of your bruises in good light. My hands trembled. Not fear, release. I can do that, I said. Good. And when you get here, we're going to talk about divorce papers and a restraining order. Not because you're dramatic, because you're smart. Women's empowerment after abuse isn't about being fearless. It's about being strategic. I showered quickly, put on a plain sweater and pants, and tucked my hospital bracelet under my sleeve like a secret. Before I left, I walked through the house once more. I checked windows, I checked doors, I checked the camera feed. I grabbed the shoebox with my documents and slid it into a tote bag. Then I walked out. The sun was bright, almost disrespectful. The neighborhood looked manicured, peaceful, the kind of place where people believed bad things happened somewhere else. I took an Uber to Renee's office downtown. The ride felt like a tunnel, trees, traffic, buildings, all of it passing like scenery, while my mind replayed Darius's face in the hospital. Not worried, just irritated that my pain was inconvenient. Renee's office was on the 10th floor of a glass building. When I stepped inside, the air smelled like lemon cleaner and printer ink. Legal smells, serious smells. The receptionist smiled and handed me a clipboard. My hands shook again as I wrote my name. Monique Harris. My name outside of my marriage. Renee met me at the door to her office. She looked exactly the same as she had in college. Sharp eyes, neat hair, posture that said she didn't ask permission. She hugged me once, tight and brief. Then she held me at arm's length and looked at my face. You got marks? She asked. I lifted my sweater slightly and showed her the bruising on my hip. Her jaw set. Okay, she said again, but this time it sounded like a lock clicking. She closed the office door. Sit. I sat. Renee opened a notebook and wrote a date at the top. Tell me everything, she said. Not the polite version, the real version. So I did. I told her about the joint account, the limited access, the way Darius would demand transfers like he was my boss. Gloria's constant criticism, Brielle's spending, the shove, the grip marks, the threats. Renee didn't interrupt. She just wrote. When I finished, she looked up. First thing, she said. We get you a private account at a bank he doesn't use, today. I blinked. Today? Today, she repeated. Second thing, we talk about the house. Third thing, we draft papers. Fourth thing, we plan your exit. You do not wing leaving an abusive situation. I rubbed my palms on my jeans. I can't just disappear. People will talk. Renee leaned forward. Let them. Gossip won't kill you. Darius might. The bluntness made my stomach flip. but it also made the air feel clearer. Renee slid a list across the desk. "This is what I need from you," she said. "Proof of income, proof of payments, proof of abuse. You already started. Good. Keep going," I nodded. "I have screenshots. I have statements. I installed a camera." "Smart," she said. "Make sure it's legal in your state, but in your own home, in common areas, you're usually fine. We'll verify. And put the footage on cloud storage he can't access." "I already set it to share to you," I admitted. For the first time, Renee smiled. "That's my girl." She stood. "Now let's open that bank account." The bank was 2 blocks away. Walking through the city with Renee beside me felt strange, like stepping into a life where I didn't have to explain myself. We entered a marble lobby with quiet air conditioning and soft music. The receptionist looked up, then looked down at my bruised face. Because even when you hide bruises, people see the exhaustion in your eyes. Renee did most of the talking. I provided documents. I signed forms. I opened an account in my name only. When the banker asked how much I wanted to deposit, I swallowed. "How much can you move without him noticing?" Renee asked quietly. I thought about the joint account, the way Darius watched it, the way he panicked if my spending wasn't approved. "Not much," I whispered. "Then we start small," Renee said. "Slow transfers. Cash back at the grocery store. Any legitimate reimbursements from work go straight here. Over time, you build your own oxygen." Oxygen. That word again. The banker slid a debit card across the desk. It was just plastic, but my fingers tingled when I touched it. I walked out of the bank with my own card in my wallet for the first time in years. Outside, Renee stopped me on the sidewalk. "Now," she said, "we talk about the big stuff." My throat tightened. "Divorce?" "Yes." I stared at a couple laughing as they passed, holding hands like the world was simple. "I thought I could fix it," I said. Renee's eyes softened. "You tried," she said, "but you can't fix people who benefit from you being broken." We went back to her office, and she opened a file on her computer. "We're going to draft divorce papers," she said, "and we're going to draft a temporary protective order. Whether it gets granted depends on evidence, but we plan as if you need it." I nodded. My voice felt stuck. "What about the house?" Renee tapped her pen. "Whose money paid the mortgage?" "Mine," I said. "Every month." "Then we look at how the deed is titled and what your options are," she said. "We can't just wave a wand, Monique. But there are legal paths. If he's contributed nothing, if you can prove you paid, if there's fraud, if there are agreements, there are options." Options. Another door. Renee's fingers moved fast across the keyboard. She asked questions like a surgeon, dates, amounts, names, patterns. "How long has he been unemployed?" 6 months, I said, then corrected myself. "Officially. He tells people he's building a business. Any proof he was fired?" "He says it was political." Renee gave a humorless laugh. "It's always political when a man gets caught." I hesitated. "He used to work at an office supply distributor," I said. "Marketing. He had access to expense reports." Renee's eyes sharpened. "Do you have any reason to think he was creative with those reports?" My stomach dropped. Because yes, I did. I'd seen receipts that didn't make sense. Gas charges on days he claimed he stayed home. Meals billed to clients who didn't exist. Once, a late notice about a payment discrepancy that Darius waved away with a smile. "Don't worry, baby," he'd said. "Just a clerical thing." And I'd believed him because believing him kept my life quiet. Now, I told Renee the truth. "I think he's been taking money," I whispered. "Small amounts. I covered a couple times. I fixed reports." Renee leaned back slowly. "You did what you thought you had to do to survive," she said. "But you stop now. You don't cover, you don't fix, you don't rescue." I nodded, shame burning my cheeks. Renee pointed at me. "Monique, listen. If he's committing fraud and you know it, you need to protect yourself legally. We're going to be careful about what you do next. What do I do? Renee slid a small recorder across the desk. You keep records of conversations in a legal way. You keep your own notes. And you do not confront him alone. I swallowed. I live with him. Renee's gaze didn't soften. Then we plan like you're living with a threat. The words were heavy, but they were honest. When I left Renee's office, the sun was lower. I rode back home in another Uber, the tote bag on my lap like a treasure chest. My phone was still at home, right where Renee told me to leave it. For the first time, I wasn't traceable. When I walked into the house, Gloria was on the couch watching talk shows at full volume. Brielle was at the dining table opening packages. Darius was in the kitchen, eating chips like he'd cooked. He looked up when he saw me. "Where you been?" "Doctor follow-up," I lied. He squinted. "You didn't answer my texts." "I left my phone," I said. Gloria snapped her head around. "Who leaves their phone?" she demanded. "What if we needed you?" I stared at her, calm. "You didn't?" Brielle snorted. "She acting brand new." Darius stepped closer, his body filling the doorway. "Don't start," he warned. I held his gaze and said, "I'm not starting anything." And because I didn't flinch, because my voice didn't shake, he backed off. Just a fraction. Abusers love fear. They don't always know what to do with calm. That night, after they went to bed, I opened my laptop again. I added notes to file. I typed dates. I wrote down what Darius said, how he said it, who was present. Then I opened my email and sent Renee copies of everything I could. Statement PDFs, screenshots, photos of bruises. At 1:12 a.m., I received a reply. "Got it. Keep going. And Monique, don't let them see you cry. If you have to cry, do it in the shower. Water covers sound." I stared at that line for a long time. Because it wasn't poetic. It was practical. The kind of advice women pass to each other when the world doesn't protect us. The next week became a quiet war. On the outside, I was the same wife. I cooked, I cleaned, I worked. I nodded when Gloria criticized my salt. I ignored Brielle's shopping bags. I smiled when Darius told neighbors he was between opportunities. On the inside, I was building a case. Every morning, I went to work and arranged my face like everything was normal. Every lunch break, I made small moves. Cash back at the grocery store, a check deposited into my private account, a call to Renee from my office phone. Every evening, I returned home and listened. Darius got sloppy when he thought he was in control. He'd talk about his plans on speakerphone. He'd argue with collectors and pretend it was customer service. Gloria would brag to her friends about our house and our lifestyle. Brielle would mention the name of a boutique and forget I could see the charges. I saved it all. One Thursday, Darius came home with a grin that made my stomach tighten. "Good news," he said, tossing his jacket onto my chair. I didn't ask. I waited. "I got a line on some money," he said, "an investment, but I need you to transfer $2,000 tonight." Gloria perked up. "See, my son is a man with vision." Brielle clapped once. "Ooh, we going up." Darius leaned close to me, his breath smelling like mint and arrogance. "Do it," he said. "And don't be weird." My heart beat steadily. "Okay," I said. Then I went to the kitchen and poured myself water with hands that didn't shake. Because I wasn't going to transfer $2,000, I was going to do something better. That night, while Darius slept, I opened the joint account and initiated a small transfer, $200, into my private account. Not enough to trigger his alarms, just enough to keep building my own oxygen. Then I opened my work email and sent myself a calendar reminder. Change passwords. Update beneficiaries. Lock credit. It felt cold, the way planning feels cold when you stop calling it love. The hospital bracelet finally came off a few days later. The adhesive left a faint mark on my wrist, a pale circle like a ghost of the person I'd been in that bed. I threw the bracelet away, then dug it out of the trash and put it in the file box. Not for sentiment, for symbolism. Proof that my body had protested the life I was living. On Monday, Renee called me at work. I checked the camera laws, she said. You're good in common areas for security purposes. Keep it aimed at the living room, not bedrooms, and make sure the cloud login is yours alone. I already changed the password, I said. Good, she replied. Now have you decided when you're going to serve him papers? I stared at the office window, the city moving outside like it didn't know my private war. Soon, I said. Renee's voice softened. Monique, pick a moment when you have control, when you have witnesses or security, not during a fight. I thought about Darius's temper, Gloria's screaming, Brielle's phone recording. I thought about the gated community guards. I thought about neighbors who loved gossip more than truth. I want it to be undeniable, I said. I want them to understand in 1 second that the power is gone. Renee was quiet for a beat. Okay, she said finally. Then we make it undeniable. That's when I told her about the silver serving tray. It was a silly detail, but it mattered. The tray was something Gloria loved, something she brought out on holidays to show off as if she'd earned it. A shiny dome, heavy, dramatic. The kind of object meant for reveals. Renee's voice turned amused. You want to serve them justice like dinner? I smiled just barely. Yes, I said. Then we'll prepare the menu, Renee said. Over the next 3 months, because yes, I waited. And yes, that was the hardest part. I built my folder the way you build a trap. Patient, exact, impossible to escape once stepped into. I didn't rush because rushing is how women get hurt. I moved like a professional. I met Renee after work on Fridays. We drafted divorce papers and revised them until every line was tight. We gathered evidence of financial abandonment. My payments, my records, the way he contributed nothing. We printed bank statements and highlighted transfers. We labeled receipts. We created timelines. And we planned a restraining order request, even if only temporary, backed by the shove, the grip marks, the threats, and whatever else he gave us. The hardest part was pretending. Pretending to be okay while my stomach twisted every time Darius raised his voice. Pretending not to notice Gloria moving my things like she owned them. Pretending not to scream when Brielle called me auntie, like I was an old woman lucky to be included. But I had a mantra. Calm is a weapon. The month I paid off the last mortgage installment, using my annual bonus, because of course it was my money, something shifted inside me. The house wasn't just a place I suffered. It was an asset, a structure, a legal fact. Renee started the process to separate the title as much as our laws allowed, using the leverage we had. Documentation of payments, the way Darius had coerced the joint naming, the evidence of abuse and financial exploitation. The process wasn't magic. It was paperwork, fees, waiting periods, signatures. But it moved. Meanwhile, Darius grew more comfortable, more arrogant, because the more secure he felt, the more careless he became. He started leaving his phone unlocked. He started talking about getting back on top like it was owed to him. He started drinking earlier in the day. He'd brag to his friends about how I handled everything because that's what good wives do. Gloria would nod like she'd trained me. Brielle would laugh like it was cute, and I'd smile like I agreed. Until the night everything lined up. 2 weeks before that Thursday, I had my first real test. Darius stormed into the bedroom waving his phone. Why is the balance lower? He demanded. His eyes were wild, not because he cared about bills, but because he could feel control slipping. Gloria appeared in the doorway behind him, ready to pile on. I didn't jump. I didn't plead. I sat on the edge of the bed and looked at him the way I looked at a client who wanted me to ignore the math. I paid the water bill and the HOA, I said. Same as always. He leaned closer, voice thick with threat. Don't move money without telling me. I nodded once. Okay. That word calmed him. Men like Darius don't want partnership. They want compliance. And I was serving it spoon by spoon, until the moment I could flip the table. After he left, I went into the bathroom, turned on the shower, and let the water roar like a shield. I didn't cry. I just breathed and repeated what Nurse Tanya gave me during my hospital wake-up call. You don't have to earn safety. You are allowed to demand it. That night, I locked my credit, changed passwords, and removed his devices from my cloud accounts. I updated beneficiaries on my work policy and saved the confirmations inside file. Financial abuse in marriage is designed to trap you. Every lock I changed was a bar sliding into place. Quiet, final, protective alone. It was a Thursday, end of month. My office had been a pressure cooker, audit reports due by morning, clients calling, partners barking deadlines like orders. I came home late. Not because I wanted to, because I was the only one in my house who still lived in reality. The driveway was silent, the porch light was on, and when I opened the door, the house was bright. Too bright. My stomach tightened. That old bad feeling. They were waiting in the living room, lined up like a tribunal. Darius in the center, legs crossed, posture arrogant. Gloria to his right, eyes sharp with accusation. Brielle to his left, phone in hand, smirk ready. I didn't even get a hello out. Darius stood and strode toward me, face red, jaw clenched. Honey, I started, because old habits die hard. His hand flashed. The slap landed on my cheek with a sound that made the room feel smaller. Heat spread across my face. My head snapped to the side. For a second, the world went quiet except for the blood rushing in my ears. I didn't fall. I didn't cry. I didn't cover my face. I just stood there and looked at him. "Where the hell have you been?" he shouted. "It's damn near midnight and there's no dinner." Gloria surged forward. "We've been starving," she shrieked. "A wife's job is to feed her family." Brielle didn't even bother to look up fully. "She's useless," she said, voice bored. "Always acting like work is an excuse." My cheek throbbed. My hip ached. My chest felt tight. And inside me, something cold clicked into place. Because the camera in the corner was blinking. Because Renee already had the cloud access. Because the deed process was done. Because the divorce papers were printed. Because the bank statements were highlighted. Because my private account was funded enough for me to breathe. Darius shoved my shoulder hard enough that I stumbled into the shoe rack. "Get in the kitchen," he snarled. "Cook, and don't come out until the food is decent." Gloria's eyes glittered. "And make it right," she hissed. "No bland nonsense." Brielle laughed. "Maybe she'll poison us. That'd be the most useful thing she's ever cooked." My hands trembled, not from fear, but from adrenaline. I took a breath, slow, controlled. Then I looked Darius in the eye and said quietly, "All right." He blinked, surprised by the lack of resistance. "I'll prepare something special," I continued, voice low. "The dish you deserve tonight." Gloria's lips curved. She thought it was victory. Darius stepped back, satisfied. "That's better," he said. "Go!" I walked to the kitchen like a servant, because that's what they expected. But the moment I shut the kitchen door, the air changed. The kitchen wasn't a punishment anymore. It was my staging room. I leaned against the door for 1 second, eyes closed. My cheek burned. My heart beat steady. Then I opened my eyes and moved. First, I grabbed the big chef's knife. Not to cook, but to make noise. I pulled out the cutting board and set it on the counter. I lifted the knife and slammed it down. Chop, again, chop. I kept a rhythm, loud enough to travel through walls. Chop, chop, chop. Out in the living room, I could picture their faces. Smug, satisfied, hungry. They thought I was chopping onions. They thought I was broken again. But on the counter, there were no onions. No meat, no ingredients. Just an empty board and a sound designed to make them comfortable. With my other hand, I opened the cabinet above the fridge and pulled down the silver tray, the holiday tray. The dome gleamed under the light, spotless. Gloria's pride. I set it on the counter like an altar. Then I opened the drawer beneath the sink, the secret drawer I'd installed when I realized privacy didn't exist in my own home. Inside was my folder, thick and heavy. File. I slid it out and laid it open. 3 documents sat on top, prepared like a final audit report. The deed paperwork, Proof of ownership, my name where it mattered. The divorce papers, my signature already on the line. The bank statements, highlighted transfers glowing neon like confession. I placed them carefully on the tray. Deed in the center, divorce on the left. Statements on the right. Balanced, symmetrical, like a meal plated by a chef who hated you. Then I covered it with the dome. From the outside, it looked like luxury. From the inside, it was the end. I checked my watch. 20 minutes. Perfect. I lifted the tray with both hands. It didn't weigh much. Not compared to what I'd carried for 5 years. I took one more breath, smoothed my face into calm, and turned toward the dining room. Because the true-life drama wasn't in the cooking. It was in the reveal. The dining room felt like a stage lit too bright for midnight. They were already seated when I walked in, like they'd been waiting for the curtain to rise. Marcus, Darius, sat at the head of the table with his elbows wide, taking up space the way men do when they believe they own it. Gloria sat to his right, spine stiff, chin high, hands folded like a queen about to be served. Brielle lounged on the left with her phone angled toward the table, ready to capture whatever she could turn into a story that made her look important. 3 parasites dressed like a family. When the silver dome caught the light, Gloria's eyes sharpened with greedy approval. "Now that's more like it," she said, voice dripping with satisfaction. "A woman can work all day, but she still needs to remember her real job." Darius huffed. "You took your sweet time. If it's bland, you're going right back in there." Brielle leaned forward, sniffing like she expected the smell of chicken and spices to crawl out on its own. "Why don't I smell anything?" she said, half laughing. "You didn't just boil noodles, did you?" I didn't answer, not because I was afraid, because silence was part of the meal. I set the tray down in the center of the table, slowly, carefully, as if I were placing something sacred. The metal kissed the glass with a quiet clink that sliced through their chatter. For a moment, the room stilled. Even the wall clock seemed louder. Tick, tick, tick. I stood at the head of the table, my hands relaxed at my sides, my face calm, too calm. Darius noticed, his eyes narrowed, suspicion trying to punch through his hunger. "What's with your face?" he asked. "You mad?" I let my gaze travel across all of them, one by one, like I was taking inventory. Then I said, evenly, "Go ahead." Gloria's eyebrows lifted. "Excuse me?" "Lift the lid," I repeated. My voice was quiet but firm. "This is the best dish I can offer you tonight. Eat until you're full." The words were polite. The tone was not. Darius reached for the dome immediately, impatient, like a toddler grabbing candy. His fingers wrapped around the knob and yanked it up with a sharp metallic scrape. He expected steam, aroma, proof that I'd returned to my place. Instead, the air stayed cold. No smell, no warmth, just paper. The dome clanged onto the table beside him, loud as a dropped gavel. The sound echoed in the sudden silence, and for the first time that night, I saw Darius's confidence hesitate. His eyes widened as he stared down at the documents like they were a trap snapping shut. "What the hell is this?" he whispered. Gloria leaned forward, squinting. "Where's the food?" she snapped. "Why are you giving us newspapers?" She grabbed the thick stack on the right, irritated, ready to insult me again. Then her eyes caught the neon highlights and the numbers. The color drained from her face as if someone had opened a drain in her skin. Brielle snatched the pages on the left, scanning fast, hungry for drama. Her mouth fell open. "Darius!" she shrieked, voice cracking. "It's divorce papers! She's serious! She wants a divorce!" The word divorce hit the room like a slap. Darius's chair scraped back so hard it squealed against the floor. He stood, towering over the table, hands trembling as he grabbed the deed. He read the name line once, then again. Then he looked up at me, eyes wild. "Why is your name the only one on here?" he demanded. "Where's mine? You—" His voice turned into a snarl. "You tricked me!" I smiled, not warm, not sweet, a smile like ice. No, I said. I stopped letting you trick me. Gloria slammed the bank statements down like she could beat the truth out of them. This is fake, she screeched. You forged this. I tilted my head. Those are official statements from my bank, with transaction IDs, dates, times. I tapped the highlighted lines with one finger, calm as an auditor. Your allowance, your shopping trips, your little tea parties. Every month you held out your hand like I was the help. Gloria's lips trembled. I'm his mother. And I'm not your ATM, I replied. Brielle's phone was up now, filming, her eyes shining like this was the best entertainment she'd had all year. Say it again, she whispered, half thrilled. This is crazy. Darius threw the deed down hard. You don't get to do this, he barked. You don't get to decide anything in this house. I stepped closer, just one step. Not aggressive, controlled. This house, I said, is mine. Gloria laughed, a high, cracked sound. Mine? You're a guest here. Darius is the head of this household. I let out a small breath that almost sounded like a chuckle. Head of the household? I repeated. A head who hasn't paid one bill in a year? A head who lives off his wife's paycheck and still has the nerve to raise his hand? Darius's nostrils flared. His fists balled. For a second, I saw it. His old reflex. Violence as punctuation. He started around the table, shoulders rolling forward, ready to make me smaller. My heart beat once, hard. But I didn't move back. I lifted my chin and met him head on. You want to hit me again? I asked quietly. Go ahead. Darius froze, confused by the invitation. I pointed toward the corner of the living room where the small camera blinked red, steady and unforgiving. The security camera recorded your slap earlier, I said, and it's backed up to the cloud, to my attorney, to a file you can't touch. One more time, and you don't just get divorce papers. You get criminal charges. The room shifted. Gloria's eyes darted to the ceiling corner, panic flickering. Brielle's smile faltered. Her phone lowered slightly, as if suddenly she remembered cameras worked both ways. Darius's face changed, rage folding into fear, then into something uglier, hatred mixed with helplessness. He looked like a man who just realized the cage door had closed behind him. You set me up, he hissed. I didn't deny it. I didn't apologize. I simply said, get out. 3 words, no extra air. Gloria exploded first. She swept her arm across the table in one violent motion, sending papers flying like white birds. The bank statements fluttered to the floor. The divorce pages slid under chairs. The deed photocopy skidded toward my feet. Her scream filled the room. You ungrateful witch! After everything we've done for you! Everything you've done to me, I thought. Darius paced like a caged animal, grabbing the deed copy and crumpling it into a ball before throwing it at my shoulder. The paper bounced off, soft, pathetic, an insult without power. Brielle started crying, loud and theatrical, hugging her designer bag like it was a child. Where am I supposed to go? She wailed. My followers! My life! I watched them unravel the way I'd watch companies unravel in audit meetings when the numbers finally spoke. Panic makes people loud. Truth makes them messy. I let them spin for exactly 2 minutes, long enough for the camera to capture every second of their collapse, long enough for the neighbors to possibly hear, long enough for their sense of control to rot in real time. Then I walked to the long curtains by the window and pulled them back. Behind them were 3 giant black garbage bags, stuffed full, tied tight. Thump! I dragged the first one to the center of the room and dropped it at Darius's feet. Thump! The second landed by Gloria's chair. Thump! The third hit near Brielle's heels. The plastic smelled faintly of mothballs and dust. My hands didn't shake. Those are your things, I said, voice flat. Clothes, shoes, personal items. What you could take without stealing from me again. Brielle's sobs turned into a shriek. She ripped one bag open, and clothes spilled out wrinkled, tangled, treated like trash. her face twisted in horror at the disrespect. "You ruined my stuff!" she screamed. I stared at her. "You ruined my life. We're even." Gloria clutched her chest dramatically, staggering as if she might fall. Her breath turned loud, wheezing, her favorite performance. "Oh, oh Lord," she gasped. "My heart, Darius." In the past, that act would have cracked me. I would have rushed to her, apologized, fetched water, begged her not to call me wicked. But I knew the truth. I'd seen her latest checkup paperwork when she left it on the counter, careless. Her heart was fine. The only thing failing was her grip. I watched her without moving. "If you need medical help," I said calmly, "I can call an ambulance, but you're still leaving." Gloria's eyes snapped open, anger replacing the fake weakness. She straightened instantly, exposed by her own recovery. Darius shifted tactics next, because abusers always do. When fear doesn't work, they use nostalgia. He softened his voice, stepping closer with his hands open, like he was offering peace. "Monique, baby, come on. We've had good times. Don't do this. Think about what people will say." I didn't blink. "People don't pay my mortgage," I said. His jaw tightened. "You're really going to throw your husband out in the middle of the night?" I leaned forward slightly. "You threw your hands at me in the middle of the night. You're lucky I'm only throwing you out." For the first time, Brielle looked genuinely scared. "Where are the car keys?" she asked, voice small. "We can at least leave in the SUV." I smiled again, small and sharp. "What car?" I asked. "The one in my name?" Darius's eyes narrowed. "Stop playing." "I'm not," I said. "I paid it off with my bonus. I have the title, and I hid the keys." Gloria's mouth opened and closed like a fish out of water. "You can't." "I can," I cut in, and my voice didn't rise, "because I finally did what you never expected me to do." I glanced at each of them. I chose me. I pulled my phone from my pocket and held it up so they could see the screen. One button, community security. I wasn't bluffing. My thumb hovered above it, steady. "You have 10 seconds, I said. "Either you walk out with your bags, or Mr. Brooks and his team come in and escort you out in front of the neighbors." Darius's face went pale. Shame is the one thing a man like him fears more than consequences. Gloria looked toward the front window, already imagining curtains twitching, whispers spreading, her precious image drowning. Brielle's tears hiccuped as she realized there would be no Uber, no credit card, no quick rescue. I began counting, slow like a clock. 1. Darius's throat worked. "You can't do this." 2. Gloria hissed. "Darius, do something." 3. Brielle scrambled to shove her clothes back into the bag, hands clumsy. 4. Darius grabbed one bag, hauling it up with a grunt like he was lifting his own pride. 5. Gloria stood stiffly, chin high, refusing to touch anything, as if dignity could keep her warm in the rain. 6. Brielle clutched her bag and looked at Darius. "We're really leaving?" 7. Darius grabbed Gloria's arm. "Move!" he snapped at her. "Move!" 8. They stumbled toward the door in a messy line, Darius first with the bag on his shoulder, Brielle dragging hers behind, Gloria walking empty-handed like a queen heading to exile. 9. I opened the door wide. Cold wind rushed in. The first drops of rain hit the porch like tiny hard truths. 10, I said softly. "Good choice." They stepped outside. The night swallowed them instantly. Black sky, wet air, the smell of incoming storm. Their bags sagged under the weight of everything they'd taken for granted. Darius turned at the threshold, eyes burning. "You'll regret this," he spat. I stared at him. I already regretted staying. Then I slammed the door. Boom! The sound vibrated through my bones like the final period at the end of a long, ugly sentence. I threw the deadbolt. I latched the chain. I pressed my palm against the wood and felt the house settle into silence behind me. Outside, their voices rose, banging, pleading, screaming. The rain got heavier, drumming the roof like applause for a decision I should have made years earlier. I didn't open the door. I walked to the window, lifted the curtain just enough to see without being seen. They stood on my porch soaked within seconds. Darius cursing, Brielle crying, Gloria trembling but still trying to hold her chin up like pride could block weather. And in that moment, something inside me unclenched. Because the truth was simple, and it tasted better than any meal I could have cooked. I wasn't their wife. I was their supply. And tonight, the supply had been cut off. The rain didn't let up. It thickened, turned sharp, like the sky was scrubbing my porch clean. Inside my house, my actual house, was quiet in a way it had never been. No talk show blasting, no cabinet slamming, no footsteps pacing like a threat. Just the soft tick of the wall clock and the low hum of the HVAC finally working for someone who deserved it. I stood with my back against the door for a long time, listening to them outside cycle through every emotion in their limited vocabulary. Rage, insults, pleading, more rage. Darius called me names that used to slice me open. Gloria shouted about disrespect and family and God's punishment. Brielle sobbed about her stuff like a wrinkled blouse was the real tragedy. Then the neighbors' porch lights started popping on one by one. Curtains shifted. A door opened somewhere down the street. I knew what Darius would do before he did it. Because abusers always want an audience. His voice changed on a dime, softer, higher, the voice of a wounded man. "Help!" he shouted. "My wife is having some kind of breakdown. She threw us out in the rain. My mother's sick. Please!" Gloria, on cue, let her knees buckle and collapsed dramatically onto the wet porch boards. Brielle dropped beside her, wailing like we were on the final episode of a cheap soap opera. It almost worked. I heard murmurs. I saw a shadow under an umbrella coming closer. Mr. Whitman from 3 houses down. The HOA guy who loved rules when they benefited him. I didn't panic. I didn't throw open the door to argue. I did what I'd learned to do in every audit meeting. I brought receipts. I called security. The line rang twice before Mr. Calvin Brooks answered. Voice calm, professional. "Community security." "This is Monique Harris," I said, loud enough for anyone outside to hear through the door. "There are 3 people on my porch causing a disturbance and trying to force entry. They no longer live here. I need assistance." "On the way, ma'am," Mr. Brooks said, no hesitation. Within minutes, 2 security vehicles rolled up with blue lights flashing softly against the rain. Mr. Brooks and 2 guards stepped out, shoulders squared, moving with the kind of confidence men have when they're paid to keep order. Darius straightened, ready to perform. "Sir, this is my home," he said, spreading his hands. "My wife is upset. She's—" Mr. Brooks didn't even flinch. His eyes went to the house, then back to Darius. "Mrs. Harris called," he said. "She's the homeowner on our records. She's asking you to leave." Gloria shot up from her fake faint like a puppet yanked by a string. "That's my son!" she screamed. "You're going to throw us out?" Mr. Brooks's expression didn't change. "Ma'am, you're trespassing," he said simply. I cracked the door open just enough to speak. The security chain still latched. Rain misted in. Darius lunged forward instinctively, but Mr. Brooks's arm blocked him. "Mr. Brooks," I said, voice steady, "I'm asking you to escort them off the property." Darius's eyes burned into me. "Monique, please," he hissed, voice dropping low again, trying to slip back into control. "We can talk. You don't want everyone knowing our business." I met his gaze through the narrow opening. "My business is my safety," I said, "and you've had enough of it." The guards moved in. Darius resisted for half a second, just enough to show the neighbors who he really was. Then his shoulders slumped. Gloria muttered curses under her breath. Brielle's mascara ran in black rivers down her cheeks as she dragged her bag like it weighed a ton. As they were escorted down the walkway, Darius suddenly remembered what power used to feel like. "The keys!" he shouted, turning. "The car keys!" My wallet. Throw me my wallet at least. I didn't smile wide. I didn't gloat. I just let the words land like a final stamp. The SUV is in my name, I called back. And the cards in your wallet were authorized users on my account. I shut them off. His face went pale, then hollow. Because he understood exactly what financial abuse in marriage really is. Access. And access was gone. The gate at the entrance of the community swallowed them into darkness. The rain kept falling, but it sounded different now. Less like punishment, more like protection. Like nature itself was washing the last of them off my life. I locked the door again, checked the chain, then turned the lights down low. My cheeks still stung, my hips still throbbed, but inside my chest there was a strange, bright quiet. I showered for a long time, letting hot water erase the smell of their voices. When I stepped out, I caught my reflection in the fogged mirror. Tired eyes, swollen cheek, but something new behind them. Space. The next weeks moved fast, the way life does when you stop carrying dead weight. Renee filed the divorce papers. The camera footage backed my timeline. My private account became my foundation instead of my secret. I changed every password, updated every beneficiary, locked my credit, and stopped rescuing Darius from his own choices. And a year later, when I stood in a bright event hall cutting the ribbon for my foundation, one built to support women who needed a hospital wake-up call before they realized they deserved peace, I saw him, Darius. Thinner, older, eyes sunken like regret had eaten the man he pretended to be. Beside him, Gloria sat in a wheelchair, wrapped in a blanket. No pearls, no perfume, just the raw reality they'd always tried to avoid. He looked at me like he expected anger, tears, a scene. I gave him none of it. I placed a food box and an envelope in his shaking hands and said, professionally, "Next in line, sir." Then I turned to the person behind him and kept moving. Because the perfect revenge isn't screaming. It's becoming so safe, so successful, so peaceful that the people who broke you can't reach you anymore. Not with fists, not with guilt, not even with memory. If this story hit something in you, subscribe for more true-life drama that turns pain into power. Drop a comment with the city you're listening from and tell me, was I wrong for serving them that silver tray truth? And don't forget to tap the next video on screen. I've got 2 more waiting for you.